Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM. KFYO, broadcasting from the Culligan Water Studios. Better water, pure and simple. It is campaign season, and joining us in studio, talk a little bit about not only the Railroad Commission, but also Reelection campaign, chairman of the Railroad Commission for Texas, which, no, we're not going to talk about railroads. It's Christi Craddick. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you in studio today. To our listeners, for those who maybe don't know what all's happening with the Railroad Commission and why you've been in Lubbock and I know traveling the state. What's going on these days?
Well, first and foremost, I always like to say the Railroad Commission has nothing to do with railroads, which you alluded to. So we do oil and gas, pipeline safety inspections, gas utilities, which we hear about from the Lubbock area, and coal mines. And so, it is a good place to be. I say it's the most important agency in the state when you're 30% of the state's economy in the oil and gas industry. But I'm running for re-election. So I've been there coming up on 5 years. I'll be up in this next cycle. And so we're doing a tour of Lubbock and the surrounding area because there's no oil and gas in Travis County. You've got to get out of Austin to see what's really going on in the oil and gas industry.
Well, so what is I guess right now, what is the main things people are looking at with oil and gas? I know a couple of months ago with, when the hurricane came through, everyone talked about the gas shortage. Now, I was out of town. I was on vacation, and I had logged on to Facebook and I had seen gas shortages. And then I saw, different railroad commissioners coming out and going, it's fine. It'll be okay. Where are we now? Everything good?
We had an interesting week basically with Harvey sitting in the Gulf Coast, and it closed down all of our ports. About over half of our refining was offline. And yes, we had some localized shortages. Had people not gone crazy on Facebook and other social media, we would have been fine. But it was opening a dove season. It was holiday weekend. It was football weekend, and people wanted to go top off, and they got nervous. And social media really was a challenge. But we do have gas. We've always had gas. If you watch the price at the pump, it's beginning to go back down to where it was. But even more importantly, the Gulf Coast region is beginning to see some recovery. We've got all the ports back open. Our refining capabilities are back up to full speed. So we've done a good job on that piece, really recovering. We've got a long way to go in other parts, but the oil and gas industry and refining and just what you see at the pump is back up going again. You
said you're obviously you're here running for re-election. What does the future look like for the oil and gas industry in Texas and for the Railroad Commission, in your opinion?
I think this is a great place to be as an agency because it's a great industry when you look at it. You've got an industry that today in Texas where half the industry in the country is going on in Texas, particularly in the Permian Basin, so just south of the Lubbock area. But half the rigs running in the state, 450,000 miles of pipeline that have been built today, and we can expect to see that continue to grow. As an agency, we've worked on IT upgrades and being more transparent and more efficient. We've got a ways to go with that. Finding and keeping good people and working with Mexico as they continue with their upgrades and their deregulation. And we want them to buy our natural gas, so they've got to continue building infrastructure. That's opportunity for us. And the last piece of it really, as we're looking at this industry, is continuing to educate people across this country, particularly the federal government, which is a lot friendlier today than it was 9 months ago.
Right.
And I like to give this example. When the Obama administration walked out the door, as an agency, we were watching 200 rules that they wanted to implement with oil and gas pipelines, coal, all of those kind of rules, clean air, clean water, all those rules. Today we're watching 7 under this new administration. So I think real opportunity for this industry to continue to grow, to continue to be strong, and frankly, long-term, work with our friends across the world, and I say friends, and continue to get off of OPEC oil.
Well, one of the things, and you sort of brought it up there, was trading with Mexico, and the administration is looking at different deals with NAFTA, whether or not to remain in NAFTA. There have been some Texas officials who have said, okay, we need to, when it comes to trade with Mexico, hey, Texas benefits a lot here. How much trade is there in the oil and gas industry with Mexico, and how would that be impacted, if at all, with NAFTA being pulled out?
Well, specifically with oil and gas, because it's new for them having just opened their markets, there's not specific numbers, but we're looking at $1 trillion in the NAFTA, in the NAFTA world. And so about $1 billion go across our border with Mexico a day. And I will say legally. Where I think there are long-term opportunities, if you look at the Eagle Ford on the Texas side, which they call the Borges Basin, for instance, on their side of the border, that's oil and gas development, but they've got to build infrastructure because they don't have roads, they don't have pipelines, they don't have water, they don't have people living in that part of their country, and we do, right as you look at our border. I think there's lots of opportunity, lots of growth opportunity between the two countries, but where we're seeing it today, first and foremost, is pipeline growth. So today we've got 9 pipelines across our border, meaning Texas border, with Mexico, more being announced as we continue, and they're taking our natural gas. They're taking some of now our refined products. So that's a good trading partner for us. Plus, we need good quality workforce on both sides. So
that's interesting.
NAFTA is really going to is important. We want to make sure those we're looking at renegotiation with NAFTA, that we're looking at environmental issues. Look, that we want them, we share our water, for instance, we share our air. We want to make sure that they have our same rules in place to make sure that they're doing things safely and within good common sense rules and regulations, that we share some common sense rules. Infrastructure is really important, where we place that infrastructure long term. So there's some real opportunity with NAFTA. We don't want it to go away. It would cost the state.
Visiting with Chairman of the Railroad Commission, Christi Craddick, in studio, running for re-election. You personally, when looking into the future, you're running for re-election. Tell folks why you decided, I want to remain with the Texas Railroad Commission.
Well, first, I think part of it's IT upgrade for us. So when I got to the commission, we had a green screen. If you don't know what that is, go ask somebody. We're still on a mainframe, and we've got a challenge to continue getting more transparent, more efficient through that. Again, it's working with our friends in Mexico, working with our friends in Washington, and they are friends now, and continuing to educate communities about why this industry is important, and making sure our rules and regulations make sense. So one of the things we've done out of my office in the past year is we call it the Oilfield Relief Initiative. Look, we're in an area of the state and across the state where you've got smaller wells, stripper wells, marginal wells. You want those to stay online, but they cost dollars for paperwork and testing. And so we did an initiative to look at other ways that we adjusted our rules, but that particularly with those two types of wells. Look, those are tax dollars, if you plug them, that go away. They're jobs that go away. And we found some rules adjustments that one alone saves industry $35 million a year. Wow. So common sense rules and regulations, this is what I consider phase one, and we want to continue doing that. We still have a couple rules you can telegraph, by the way, so if anybody wants to telegraph us information. But I think looking at our rules, making sure we have best practices in place, but continuing to work with not just industry, but the public in general who wants to know information about us and what's going on in the state. It's important.
As we wrap up, tell folks where they can find more information about the Texas Railroad Commission, and then also your website where they can find out more about your campaign.
So if you Google Railroad Commission of Texas, you're going to find a lot of information about the Railroad Commission and about what's going on. We have maps, by the way, that you can go figure out where the wells are and what's going on next to you. For my campaign, it's ChristiCraddick.com, and we Facebook, we Twitter, and we have a website. We'd love to get your support, and it's ChristiCraddick.com.
All right. Thanks for stopping by today.
Thanks for having me.